Hey everybody, Andy from Tennis Euphoria, bringing you my review of the Wilson RF01 Pro, the racket that Roger Federer would have used if he had been able to have continued his career for a little longer. Of course, this is hugely interesting to any tennis fan and Roger fans. It's beautifully designed, it's got Roger all over it, it's very stylish, comes with a quality leather grip. This review is going to focus on the Pro version. I do have the RFO1 and have been hitting with that a lot too, but that will be for another day. This is of particular interest because, of course, Roger's journey through the pro staffs was of interest to anyone who's into tennis gear. He grew the head size of the pro staff previously to adapt to Rafa and the modern game, and this frame represents what he and Wilson had engineered in order for him to continue to remain competitive and current. And of course, Roger at that advancing age needed something easier to swing, and it's reported that he wanted more power and spin. And if you look at the specs, they're reduced a little bit compared to the RF97. So arguably this is more accessible to a wider range of players and more amateur players compared to that RF97 that many used to try to use and probably suffered with a little bit. So the specs are now a 98 square inch head, so slightly bigger than the previous Pro Staffs, and we have still a 16 by 19 string pattern, but an unstrung weight of 320 grams and a swing weight that is much more manageable on paper compared to the RF97. Mine measured at 324.5, which is manageable for me. And one thing I wanted to test in this review was to give the frame to other players who would be around about that swing weight target too, and more on that will come. One thing that this frame does retain is a little bit of Pro Staff feel. I'll talk about the differences later, but in terms of feel, it does still feel like quite a raw and crisp racket. So for anybody who's hit Pro Staffs previously, if you enjoy a quite direct and immediate response from the racket's string bed, then that is retained. If you're somebody who likes a long dwell time and a very soft and plush feel, then you're probably not going to enjoy the RF01 Pro. It feels to me, somewhat similar to other rackets at that sort of 65 RA, similar to an E-Zone in feel, but very, very similar to a Pro Staff of previous. Here's some other players hitting for the first time with the RF01 Pro. This is Ryan. He's an 18-year-old player who's really advanced past club play now. He's playing in tournaments, and he actually got on quite well with it. Could hit with it and enjoyed it from the first hit. He currently uses a Pure Aero, the 100 square inch version. He did comment that he found that the sweet spot was a bit smaller than his Pure Aero and that he had to concentrate a bit harder. But he was playing very effectively with it and he enjoyed it, hit a heavy ball with it. Max is 25, is an advanced club player, plays for Club A teams, likes to compete occasionally, works full time, but is still a advanced player. He plays with the V-Core 98, so this is a bit heavier than his V-Core. He really doesn't enjoy Pro Staffs, but actually really enjoyed the new RF01 Pro. So I think it's fair to say that the frame's characteristics compared to Pro Staffs is quite different now, whilst retaining that feel. This is Ray. He is a intermediate to advanced club player who's progressing quite nicely. He's in his mid-40s. He uses the Shift 99. He noticed the difference. He felt that the Shift was more forgiving, did offer a little bit more power. And he also found that the RF01 Pro was starting to get a little bit hard to swing after an hour's long session. So that also probably tells you a little bit of a story. What do I think about the RF01 Pro? I think the first thing that I want to talk about is depth of shot, spin, and power. So it definitely has delivered on offering a bit more easy power and free depth compared to Pro Staffs that have just gone by. So if you are using a Pro Staff and feel that you could still control your shots with a little bit more spin and power, this will be a really interesting switch for you. And I think if you're someone who is looking for a control orientated frame, 97 or 98 square inches, but wants some spin and power, then this is a really solid option for you. Sweet spot, though, I would say is relatively small. If I was to compare it to the upcoming Gravity Tour 98 or even a Wilson Blades Forgiveness, I actually think this is harder to use. And let's face it, the Blade 98 isn't the easiest frame to use. The other thing that I was noticing is that despite the 320-gram weight, it does offer quite a lot of plow through when you connect well, but torsional stability is a little bit lacking. And I found that that is particularly noticeable when you hit off center. So everything about hitting with the frame, for me, the Pro, of course, is very much geared towards that advanced, but critically important is your fit player who has really good footwork and hits consistently in the sweet spot. I think it's fairly unforgiving, and you will notice if you hit off center. And I also think that potentially what is quite a comfortable frame, it's got enough muting and dampening in it within that foam to take away harsh vibrations. But I think if you're someone who's not hitting the sweet spot a lot, you might run into issues because of that. I found that to carry over to volleys a little bit too. I was sort of expecting it to be, brilliant on volleys because Federer is, for me, the ultimate volleyer. But I felt it actually could do with possibly being weighted up a little bit to have real effectiveness at net. And it is quite fast through the air, so you could probably weight this up a touch, take the torsional stability up a little bit without losing that maneuverability. One thing that I thought was great about the frame is that you have more power and spin and a higher launch angle compared to pro staffs, but you still have the ability to flatten out a ball and hit with a lot of power and a lot of plow through. So that's something that I thought was, a clever piece of engineering. But again, it suits somebody, I think, who is wanting to play creatively and set up their points and play aggressively. All of us noticed a dip off in our performance between drilling and match play. I would say that this racket is too advanced for Ryan, Max, and I. There are rackets that we could play better with, so keep that in mind. You need to be seriously advanced. I would place it against the Technofiber T-Fight 315. It's going to compete, of course, with Gravities and Blades, but that's going to come down to feel. And then I also think that it's going to compete with things like the Yonex VCore 98 Tour. So this is definitely one to check out if you're an advanced player who likes to play aggressively, who's looking for a direct and relatively crisp feeling racket. It is a really interesting evolution from Pro Staffs. It's just a shame that we won't see Roger playing with it competitively. Hope that's helpful. EZO 98, the new one's coming up next, as is some other reviews of some different frames I've got in my collection that I think might interest you. So subscribe to the channel to see them. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.